Globally, social benefits in developed nations are vastly different from those in Malaysia. In developed countries, social benefits often include universal healthcare and unemployment benefits designed to reduce poverty and inequality.
But for advanced countries, they have also accumulated enough savings and investments. But in our case, we still have issue with the fund that would support the social protection.
Can Malaysia create a system that leaves no one behind? Discover more on Decimal Point. In 2028, Malaysia aims to become a high-income nation, but that doesn't necessarily equate to being a developed nation, which takes into account quality of life, infrastructure, and human development indicators. Many will still face financial challenges. Therefore, social protection's place in advancing Malaysia's developed nation agenda is extremely important to ensure everyone benefits as the country progresses. So, Datuk Norma, could you tell us what is the main purpose of having social protection programs and policies?
There are several purposes for having a social protection program and also the whole social protection framework, but I could categorize them into four main objectives. The first one, it can reduce poverty and also inequality. It helps to prevent individuals, or in this case Malaysians, from falling into poverty, and if they are already poor, there is also a way of them getting out of poverty. Secondly, is on human capital. It is also about supporting human capital through upskilling, through the social insurance, and also social protection is also, it covers for children. Then that's part of human capital development. So if children get good nutrition, that would also support for Malaysia to have a group of bright kids, basically. And the third one, it is supposed to also support those who are not necessarily covered under other schemes. For instance, if you are in the formal sector, out of 34 million of the Malaysian population, 24 million are supposed to be in the productive ages, which is the age of 15 to 64 or 15 to 59 in our case. And out of that, we have about 14 million of the working age population. And not everyone is working. So there are a lot of women who are not working, older people who are not working, or children who are not working. So that's the third one. And finally, it also can act to stabilize during economic shocks and any other kind of crisis. Social protection is supposed to come in to support individuals from falling into poverty.
Many developed nations have the demographic challenges of which the aging population is putting pressure on the pension as well as the healthcare system. So, what is the role of the social protection policies in mitigating the effect or the impact of the aging population in Malaysia's progress?
Yeah, so the demographic change could be a challenge. It can also be an opportunity. Yeah. So, but we would rather see it as an opportunity. So we call it a dividend or a benefits that you get from the demographic shift. In Malaysia especially, the government invested a lot in the 70s, 80s and 90s into educating Malaysians. So Malaysians of that generation, which you would consider an aged population, and Malaysia is soon to become that, because 40% of the Malaysian population is going to be the ages of 60 and older. It is a big percentage when you take as a total of the workforce and the Malaysian economy. So it will be a stress to the labour market, but mind you, that generation, the Gen X and also the baby boomers, amass both in terms of education and also wealth during their productive years. So if you don't utilize that, then that's when it can become a challenge. But if you were to utilize this, then it will become the benefit, or what you call the second demographic dividend, or the longevity dividend, as we call it. Yeah. So having that, using that as the investment for investing into social protection is the way that how the government should plan our social protection, and also get them to contribute, the younger generation and the generation who's still in the productive years, to contribute into a fund that could support social protection going forward.
And we have something at the moment?
At the moment, we have something, but we have to do more. Because as I mentioned, that out of 17 million of our productive age population, only 14 million are in the labor force. Okay. So you have about 7 million who is not in the labor force, and they're not contributing to the fund, or the kind of, they do not have the EPF as well, and not necessarily paying tax either. Okay. And you will also have, out of the 14 million, in the EPF account now is about 8 million, slightly 8 million over. Yeah. So you will have another 6 million or 7 million who are supposed to be active that is not contributing into EPF. So this is going to be problematic, because then you will not have enough fund sufficient to cover the pension or retirement income when they have reached the age of 60 or 65, whenever they have retired. Yeah.
Sure. And I came across this term, the sandwich generation. Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, the sandwich generation are those within the ages of 15 to 64. The reason why I kept mentioning 64, because internationally, that is the definition of the productive age. Yeah, but in our case, until 59, that they have to support their children, or young children, or going age children, and they have to support their older parents.
Hence the sandwich.
Yes, that's the sandwich generation.
And I think
is.
that would be also a financial pressure, so to say, in terms of supporting both their parents as well as their own children. So are there any social protection policies that can help alleviate this financial pressure?
Having a stronger and a more integrated social protection framework would support that, and having the funds to support old age generation and also the young would support the sandwich generation. For instance, one example that I can give you, that if we do not have enough funds to support our older generation, not everyone in the ages of 60 onwards will have any kind of income. Some of them will have the EPF, but for the majority of them would not have any income. And for that group, their children will have to support them. They will have to, from our research, the Malaysia Aging and Retirement Survey research shows that about 70 or 60% of the children, their working children, are supporting their older parents. So which shows that the younger generation, aside from them supporting their children, they also have to support their parents. Yeah. But if there are funds to support, to have, for instance, a child grant or child benefits. So the child benefits, for instance, if the government, or if there is a policy or program where for every child born within the ages of, since birth until the age of 4, which is the 1,000 days, which is considered to be the most crucial time in a life cycle, where it shapes the cognitive development and cognitive capacity of a person. So if the child each child receive some amount, which is present in many developed countries, then that would also support the working ages population, that they can use the fund, or that fund can support them to provide nutrition that could support the human capital that I mentioned earlier for them to support the family.
It has been reported that the number of own account workers, or in other words self-employed and gig workers, has increased to over 3 million, with a significant number of fresh graduates opting for freelancing. Given this trend, the idea of Universal Basic Income or UBI has been discussed as a way for additional social protection for them. Now, Prof, moving with the current trends and innovation, many countries are experimenting with this Universal Basic Income or UBI as a way to simplify social protection and, of course, to reduce inequality. But is this sustainable?
UBI is a good way to go. Yeah, in fact, UBI has been discussed by many, not just in Malaysia but elsewhere too. Yeah. But for advanced countries, they have also accumulated enough savings and investments for them to be able to reap the benefits. But in our case, we still have issue with the fund that would support the social protection. So a UBI will be more costly. Number one. Number two, we do not have enough, or we do not have the near perfect information about income, because it's based on income. So if you define that every Malaysian adult should receive an income of 3,000 ringgit, how would you assess some informal sector or some of the gig workers? Over time, it'll take time for you to build that kind of data. Yeah? So without that kind of information, it is not easy to implement a universal basic income. But the life cycle approach to social protection is a better way to target. So you are targeting the ages when Malaysians are very vulnerable. Okay. So when they are young, they are not earning, so they're very vulnerable, and you need the fund for that, because, as I mentioned, it would support the nutrition, which is very, very important at that in that cycle in one's life. And you support at the very end when people cannot work. So you are not necessarily spoiling the population, but you're actually supporting the Malaysian population and when they do not have any income when they retire.
How far are we from what you have mentioned, right? This is the ideal system, so to say. Compared to our current system that we have here, how far are we from achieving that?
We are currently targeting the poor. Targeting some term we use B40 or M40. So we are still using the method where in many advanced countries this has been shelved, or rather is being replaced by a more age categorical type of targeting, because targeting the poor or the poor group is not necessarily ideal, because income can change anytime, and also when you do not have the perfect information for you to target certain groups or certain households, that's when you'll miss. Or it depends on when you do the survey for them to fill in the forms. If during the survey, for instance, someone that's earning 30,000, 40,000, but for that period that you are surveying, that they are taking a break, so they have zero income. So this person will be eligible. But if you go by definition as a poor group, they are not poor. But what many advanced countries and elsewhere have practiced is to remove the top. So they use what is called the wealth testing or income testing. You can devise any approach what you think is suitable for your country. And by removing the top, and I think for Malaysia too, it's easier to get the data on the richer people than the poorer people, to support the aging population going forward, especially when I spoke about how in 2030 that 14% of the Malaysian population are what we consider the aged population. We will need to save now. We need to create or to start building the fund now. So that's when we proposed that it should be some kind of broad-based taxation. Yeah. So the taxation, we're hoping that the government would also reform our tax system, because currently we are focusing on the direct taxes. But what we are proposing, and due to that, our expenditure and also government revenue is very low. In fact, tax to GDP ratio is about 12%, and our government's expenditure is about 20.8%, and this is lower than Sub-Saharan Africa comparatively. Yeah, so this doesn't even compare to our peer group, which is the upper middle income countries. So what we're proposing to the government is, if we want to improve our social protection policies, we also have to look at the revenue side. So the way to contribute, and with this present sandwich generation, mind you, our median age, the Malaysian median age is 30 years old. So we still have time. Compared to Singapore, the US, and all that is about 42 years old. Ours is 30 years old. So this is the time where we should collect as much taxes as we can. So the contributory national pension tax, or you can call it a VAT. Yeah, VAT or GST is the way to support the social protection policies or expenditure, because this can collect about 1 billion ringgit, and for, let's say, if we collect 2%, for every 1% you collect is about 11 billion ringgit. If you collect 2%, it's going to be 22 billion ringgit. And yet, we only need 1 billion ringgit or slightly more to support the aging population. It depends on how much per month. It has to be a regular income for the aging population. About 15% are own account workers. So everyone is lumped into what is called the own account workers. But it can be larger than that. Many of the majority of the gig workers are not contributing to the EPF, and they are not necessarily paying taxes either. So having a coverage for all, so having the indirect taxes especially, such as the VAT or the contributory national pension system, for every Malaysian when they reach the age of 18 years old, will be the way to cover everyone, for everyone to be in the social safety net. Yeah? The responsibility of meeting the basic needs or providing the basic needs to the rakyat is the responsibility of the government.
In recent years, we can see a stronger focus on social protection policies in Malaysia. However, Malaysia's tax revenue to GDP ratio was 12.2% in 2022, lower than the Asia-Pacific average of 19.3%. Dato', could you tell us about the social protection floor?
Social protection floor basically are the basic needs that every individual should not be denied. So this is along the life cycle. So when you are a child, you should not be denied of food, of nutrition, of healthcare, and even when you're older, you are working. Yeah, when you lose your job, you're supposed to get some kind of income, or when you're old, or for pregnant mothers. So for this basic that everyone needs, is the responsibility of the government to provide that. So that's what it means. So in Malaysia, we already have, and it should be universal. It cannot just be for certain groups, because you might think that one group has more than the other, but it is not necessarily true when you go to the ground. Yeah, so it is supposed to be universal for everyone. And in Malaysia, we do have the social protection floor, which is our healthcare. Our healthcare is universal. Anyone with an IC can go to any government hospitals for that matter, and they will be covered. Their healthcare, the pregnancy, maternity, and all that is covered. Typically, or what is proposed by the ILO, because this is an ILO recommendation, that should be financed by the government. Okay. There are three components of social protection: social assistance, social insurance or social security, and the other one is the labor market policies. So it doesn't matter where you address the social protection, but it should be addressed three components at the same time, because they are supporting each other. Because by giving good social assistance, you are also actually supporting the labor market. Okay. And supporting the labor market would also contribute to the social assistance and also social insurance. Because social insurance or social security is that you will insure yourself against any risks in your life. Yeah. So if you're sick, if you're unemployed, or if you're old, then you have some kind of insurance. And typically it is also cross-subsidization. You cross-subsidize. It's just like an insurance. You take an insurance. Yeah. So in this case, if you're old, then the young will support through the contributions and the rich will support the less. Or like you take a motor car insurance or car insurance where although your car is, you may pay less, but it goes on the damage that happens to the car, not the amount that you have paid. Yeah. So the redistributive element is also present in social security. At the same time, the labour market policies would mean any kind of policies that would support individuals or Malaysians in this case to be able to earn an income. So it could be upskilling, reskilling, or it can be the grants that government give, or it can be the public works. For instance, if the government have My Step, that is actually part of the labour market policy or part of the social protection through the labour market policies.
I see. And how is enhancing the social protection actually contribute to the overall development of the nation or of Malaysia?
A very good question, because it does. Because in many developed countries, our history has shown that, for instance, South Korea, when the 1997 crisis happened or hit South Korea have reformed their social protection policies in 1980s. So they have protected, or they have policies that will protect their people, that will protect workers. Whereas in our case, we did not have that policy. Our employment insurance system or the unemployment benefits that we have now was post-1997. It was in 2018 that we introduced that. So what happened was, in 1997, the Malaysian government has to support all the big companies, and we spend billions of ringgit to support these companies so that our Malaysians are not retrenched. So we are busy protecting jobs.
While Malaysia has made progress in social protection, there are still significant gaps. The current system focuses on short-term poverty-targeted measures, which limits its ability to address long-term challenges.
For this purpose, my administration will allocate 450 million ringgit next year, which will benefit not less than 850,000 recipients. With this assistance, I may say that everyone will have food on their table. Notwithstanding this, most of the SKAS will also be receiving financial contribution given by the federal government ada sumbangan tunai rahmah SDR.
Going back to what you mentioned earlier regarding an approach that could be more effective, the life cycle approach. What are the challenges in terms of implementing this approach? Because at the end of the day, we want to help the underserved, or we want to help those who are, for example, not contributing to EPF, like the makcik or the auntie selling nasi lemak at the side of the road. What will happen to them if they do not have this kind of policies or programs that could help them?
Especially this group, the programs or the policies ought to be universal, because when you have the targeting and the selection process, in the process, because some of these processes are quite complicated and not easy to understand. So when you have registry process that's quite complicated, that's when you will exclude the very people that you want to include.
That's right, because they're not so familiar with the electronics and...
Not just that, they don't have and they don't even know. Yeah? From our survey, from our Malaysia Aging and Retirement Survey that we do at the centre, shows that about 25% of our respondents did not know that they are eligible for some of these benefits, some of these bantuan. So, but what we propose is that to use the My Card, that for those who are 60 and older, except for the top the rich population, you can easily exclude them because usually their names will be either in the LHDN or in some kind of registry that they ought to be excluded from this program. For the rest, you can transfer the funds through the e-wallet, or My Card or My Kid for young kids.
So what can the government or state government or even private organizations do to implement this approach?
I think it doesn't stop anyone, either the national government or the state government for that matter, to provide social protection. But the responsibility of meeting the basic needs or providing the basic needs to every rakyat or to the rakyat is the responsibility of the government. So hence, the social protection floor should be tax financed or should come from the government coffers. Companies can help, government can create some kind of solidarity fund, or a company can start doing that and proposing to the government. We can give the endowment for the social protection fund, and other companies can join. But the push and the incentive will have to come from the government of the day. If the state government, for instance, for the state of Sarawak, they do have funds in order for them to provide the basic pension or the old age pension or for the child grant, by all means, they can do it. I don't think the federal government will say, hey, no, you cannot do that.
Social protection is not just about welfare. It's an important investment in Malaysia's future. Without it, vulnerable groups will be left behind, increasing inequality and slowing progress. Therefore, expanding social protection is crucial. Keep up with Malaysia's progress on Decimal Point.